It was nice watching the Super Bowl. Funny seeing all those cutouts of people mixed with real people. Well, in case you were wondering where all those Biden voters went, there they are. Hunter Biden wrote a book. Yeah, sure he did. And they show Hunter's photo as a child. Good call, publishers. His book is #1 in Chinese biographies. It's also shooting up the charts in the American Crackhead Treason section. Andrew Cuomo's aide admitted to falsifying the COVID death numbers from nursing homes. It was embarrassing because it resulted from Cuomo's executive order forcing nursing homes to admit COVID patients. It was presumed that 6,000 people had died, and now we're told that it's more like 15,000.
Oops.
See how the real news seems to work? It's like the truth is always on maternity leave or something. Hunter Biden's laptop was unverified. After election, oops, he was under investigation after all. Trump's lying about there being a vaccine. The election happens and, oh, what do you know, 3 vaccines were in production. And now we get this about Cuomo. You know, Cuomo's father had a bridge named after him. I think at the very least, Andrew's entitled to have a cemetery or 2 named after him, don't you? So for this impeachment 2.0, yawn, I'll remind people again that Trump explicitly called for peaceful protest. And he used the word fight in context describing Congresspeople fighting.
Jim Jordan and some of these guys, they're out there fighting. The House guys are fighting.
Obviously, Jim Jordan didn't clock anybody in the face. Plus, the impeachment managers have used this language themselves. So has Biden. But that hasn't stopped the whole, quote, insurrection narrative. The insurrection that lasted 2 hours. It was a riot. It was a violent riot, and it should be condemned, and I do. If you recall this past summer in Seattle, at the other Capitol Hill, it was taken over, literally. 6 full blocks, 3+ weeks. It was an insurrection. They said so. It was literally called the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. What did the mayor of Seattle call it? A block party. The Summer of Love.
We have block parties and the like in this part of Seattle all the time. It's known for that.
How long do you think Seattle in those few blocks looks like this?
I don't know. We could have the Summer of Love.
Yes, it was all very loving and festive until the Autonomous Zone security shot and killed a 16-year-old black kid. Bet you don't remember that. Did you see any Democrat politician crying on camera about it?
Oops.
Welcome to the all-you-can-eat buffet of double standards. Trump has constantly been accused of having, say, far-right leanings, fascism at his core. But if we just went through 4 years of fascism, it had to be the least fear-inducing, least intimidating fascist regime in recorded history. Did anyone suffer any stigma whatsoever for having Trump hate? Of course not. It was the exact opposite. No one lost their job for supporting Biden. In fact, in some professions, it was absolutely required. Want to say Trump is a Russian spy? Have at it. No misinformation warnings for you. But if I question the Smollection, well, that has to be grounded in wild-eyed, foamy-at-the-mouth conspiracy talk. It's even linked to white supremacy, apparently. Maybe you should be put on a list. That is sheer intimidation, and it's genuinely scary. And that's how a dictatorship works. Talking about odor ve od fray can lead to real consequences. It's like the Seinfeld episode where you couldn't say the word.
My mother caught me.
Caught you doing what?
You know.
Or like saying Voldemort. But it can be said and it should be said. One of the better laid out explanations based in reason, facts, and logic came from Robert Barnes.
The president's election contest concerned 3 issues. First, did only lawfully qualified voters cast ballots for the presidential election? Second, was the method by which those ballots were cast lawfully cast? Third, was the counting of the ballots done in a lawfully correct manner? There were issues of all 3 in 6 states where the margin of victory was very light and was less than the number of questioned or contested ballots. The 6 states in question, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada, had very small margin of victories, in some cases as small as within the tenths of a percentage point.
Just as an anecdotal side note, I've noticed that the media seems to be de-emphasizing how close it was in the swing states. It was very, very close.
And they found examples and prima facie evidence that not only did that occur, but that it occurred in such a volume that it exceeded the margin of victory in each of those states. Second, there was also evidence that they cast their ballot in a manner that was not lawfully qualified. In particular, we had a record-setting flood of mail-in absentee ballots. For decades, there has been great concern about the risk that mail-in balloting presents to an accurate, honest vote.
Going back to 2005, Jimmy Carter and James Baker collaborated on a bipartisan study to restore confidence in elections. It's right there in the report. Building confidence in U.S. elections. Absentee ballots remain the largest source of potential voter fraud. I'm sorry, voter fraud. I wasn't supposed to say...
This included the New York Times, which in August of 2012 warned that an increase in absentee mail-in balloting would almost guarantee an increase of fraudulent ballots being cast. And it doesn't even require fraudulent ballots, just ballots being cast in a manner that are not consistent to the lawful requirements of the local state legislature. Because voting from home doesn't have a secret ballot component. Voting from home, the ballot could be stolen. Voting from home, the ballot could be fraudulently taken. Voting from home, the ballot could be forged. Voting from home, the ballot could be bought. Voting from home, the ballot could be bribed. Voting from home, the ballot could be extorted. Voting from home, the ballot could be blackmailed. These are all risks that leading election experts talked about, including in that August 2012 New York Times article. The only check left was a signature match check. And if they used the same strict signature match methods and standards they used for nominating petitions of third parties and independent candidates, including in 2020, at least 20% of such signatures would be routinely and repeatedly rejected.
Again, this is perfectly true, and now just consider that the mainstream media won't permit a discussion about it. The media itself had raised alarm bells that significant amounts of mail-in votes were being tossed in the primaries. In New York City, it was 1 in 4 of these votes in the 2018 primary.
Yet, when it came time to do signature match checks, we had one of the lowest rejection rates in the history of the country. So we have a record level of participation of people voting by mail, but a record low rejection rate when everybody thought the reverse would be true. The question was, did people cast the ballot in a manner that was not constitutionally qualified because it violated the signature match standard requirements passed by the local state legislatures in each of these states? The third question was whether it was counted in a constitutionally qualified manner. Well, there was evidence again in many of these states, in key counties, including Clark County, Nevada, including Wayne County, Michigan, including Milwaukee County, Wisconsin, including Philadelphia and Allegheny counties in Pennsylvania, including Fulton and other counties in Georgia, where you have democratically controlled election apparatuses excluding party observers from both the canvassing process and the count process to make sure it was done in a constitutionally conforming way.
And as far as the no evidence question goes,
unfortunately, and contrary to conventional wisdom, none of them ever allowed a meaningful trial to occur on the evidence. None of them allowed a meaningful trial on the legal merits. The biggest case, the U.S. Supreme Court case, where 18 attorney generals representing about half the country joined, including hundreds of congressmen and state representatives and millions of citizens through their public advocacy groups, in the biggest case ever brought before the U.S. Supreme Court concerning a presidential election, the U.S. Supreme Court failed to conduct any trial, failed to allow any discovery, failed to permit any legal argument, and failed to rule on any of the legal substance.
In the recent Time magazine article, The Secret History of the Shadow Campaign That Saved the 2020 Election, basically confirms all suspicion. The words are just cloaked in euphemism salad. One key passage of the article is just jaw-dropping. That's why the participants want the secret history of the 2020 election told. Even though it sounds like a paranoid fever dream, a well-funded cabal of powerful people ranging across industries and ideologies working together behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer media coverage, and control the flow of information. They were not rigging the election, they were fortifying it. And they believe the public needs to understand the system's fragility in order to ensure that democracy in America endures.
You gotta be f***ing kidding.
You see, democracy is fragile. Too fragile for the peasants to actually have it. We needed the guidance of a secret cabal. We needed this hush-hush aristocracy to save us from ourselves. It sounds like a paranoid fever dream, but no. This was a good cabal, a well-funded cabal of powerful people, controlling information, controlling perceptions, changing rules and laws, and controlling the media. It sounds a little deep-statey, but no, that's ridiculous. Just consider for a moment if this cabal had worked to elect Trump. How smoothly do you think that horse pill would be swallowed by the public? The idea of a secret cabal collaborating behind the scenes rang a bell. because Julian Assange had described it exactly for the 2016 election.
My analysis is that Trump would not be permitted to win.
Note the word usage here. Is that how democracy is supposed to work?
Why do I say that? Because he's had every establishment offside. Trump doesn't have one establishment, maybe with the exception of the evangelicals, if you can call them an establishment. But banks, intelligence, arms companies,
Well, they all want him beat.
foreign money, etc.,
Yeah.
is all united behind Hillary Clinton, and the media as well. So media owners and even journalists themselves.
Now you can say that Assange was wrong because Trump did win. Yes, but that was a shock. It wasn't considered possible. Trump's victory came out of nowhere. It was a huge kick in the cabals. But from the moment he won, we've been playing 4 years of hoaxopoly ever since. We're led to believe that yes, this cabal's been working in the shadows, behind the scenes, non-transparently, but in a good way. It's not rigging when we do it, it's fortifying. Kind of like the way Bernie Madoff fortified money, or maybe the way Lori Loughlin fortified her daughter's SAT scores. If you're operating in the shadows to change rules and laws and interfering with perceptions and information, maybe you're working in your own interests. And maybe I'm not satisfied just taking your word for it that you're the good guys, you know what I mean? This really starts getting into Animal Farm type of stuff. If you remember Animal Farm, the animals rebel against the farmer, and then they set up 7 laws to live by. But one by one, the pigs keep breaking those rules and solidifying their own power, using propaganda, intimidation, and violence. Sound familiar? Until finally, the only rule left is a total hypocrisy. All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. Time is tacitly admitting what Trump supporters already know. If it walks like a paranoid fever dream, it's a paranoid fever dream. You can't finally reluctantly acknowledge manipulation, but then say it's for our own good. Last time I checked, democracy involves free choice, no? And after all that effort to manipulate us, let's say things weren't going so well election night, say around midnight. Is it not reasonable to wonder what the cabal might do then? Claiming this was all a benevolent conspiracy is kind of like putting lipstick on a pig. And that pig is from Animal Farm. Hey everybody, hope you subscribe and like and share. Check me out on Minds, BitChute, and Rumble. Obviously, I was tinkering around with formats, so let me know what you think of that.